You're listening to the Wedding Biz Network, the voice of the creative entrepreneur. Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner with The Wedding Biz, in which I conduct in-depth and revealing interviews of icons of the weddings and event industry. And all of this is to provide you with education and inspiration. And I'm feeling pretty good right now. You know, it's the holiday season, regardless of what holiday we all celebrate. It kind of is the season. I am cold as hell here in Maryland, not enjoying that. But I feel like I've just got to look at what I have in my life, you know, in spite of what I don't have because of the pandemic. And so I'm looking forward to some time off here as we approach the end of December. My daughter and her boyfriend are going to quarantine, and then they're going to come visit from New York City. So really looking forward to that. And I just want to wish everyone, you know, as good a season as possible during these times. So last week's episode, if you miss it, was with Siwar and Majida Bisharat of My Event Design, a full-fledged luxury event design planning and management company based in Jordan and covering events across the Middle East and Europe. Really cool conversation. And now I want to introduce today's guest, and that is Alex Fitzgibbons, Managing Director of Fait Accompli out of London, which organizes, plans, and designs spectacular events worldwide for A-list and royal weddings. He orchestrated one of Vogue's top-listed weddings of 2019. Also, he is responsible for the wedding celebration of Ellie Goulding, as well as weddings for the royal family, including Prince William and Katherine, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, and Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. And I was honored that this was Alex's first interview in 19 years. So enjoy my conversation with Alex Fitzgibbons. Alex, the brilliant floral designer Rob Van Helden is the one who introduced us. I'm so excited to be having you on the show.
Well, it's good to be here, Andy, virtually. So thank you for having me. And as you say, Rob is a brilliant floral designer. I'm a big admirer.
Yeah. And I want to mention to people listening that I interviewed him on the show. He was in episode 304. Very well worth listening to. So, Alex, you know, before we dive into your work with the event world, I read somewhere or heard somewhere that you're also a helicopter pilot. Is that true?
I am. That is true. It's been a long-standing kind of passion of mine, aviation, since I was a really young kid. So, yeah, and I'm lucky enough to be able to still fly now. Obviously, not as much with Corona, but
yeah.
It's a huge love of mine.
Well, it's so interesting. Helicopter, like, it's funny. When I was younger, I really wanted to fly a helicopter as opposed to a plane. There's just something about a helicopter that really attracted me to it, you know? So have you done that all over the world, or do you rent a helicopter where you go?
I have. Well, I started off flying fixed wing, and I got my first lesson when I was at university. I went to university in America at Brown University, and back in the early 90s. And my father had very kindly given me some money to buy a computer to help with my studies at Brown. And I promptly went out and got some flying lessons with that money, and he kept on coming to visit me at Brown and was like, "Where's the computer?" And I was like, "Dad, there are huge delays." And eventually he realized that I was being, you know, economical with the truth, and so I spent that summer delivering pizzas to pay him back. But it was worth it long term.
That's funny. Well, and I also saw too in an article, if I'm saying it correctly, Tatler from last August, that you support Child Bereavement UK, and you took on a 2020 plus kilometer challenge to raise money for child bereavement. And it took you from London to Sweden, across 7 countries and 5 marathons and a cycle of 2,000 kilometers and swimming and paddling. And you raised a lot of money, that too.
I did, which actually, timing wise, I have to be honest with you, was a kind of a blessing in disguise, because I think, like obviously a lot of people in our industry who are used to being, you know, incredibly busy 99% of their life, suddenly I was sitting here in the middle of March with a completely empty diary, and I I'm a trustee of a charity called Child Bereavement. I have 5 children, and I split my time between the UK and Sweden. And some great friends of mine have lost their children in tragic accidents. So I really wanted to try and take the opportunity while I had some time to kind of raise a really transformative amount of money for the charity. So I came up with this idea to basically to run bike and kayak from London to Stockholm, which is about 2,200 kilometers.
Wow.
So it took me 17 days, and I ended up raising over $1.5 million for the charity. So,
wow.
Which was amazing. And it really, I got very lucky in terms of my timing. It was just when all the countries were opening, and, I had some incredible support, but it was an amazing experience and taught me a lot about myself, about friendship, about Europe, and the support of all my family and friends, and incredibly generous supporters who helped me raise that money. A lot of whom, I must say, are people who they're clients of mine, suppliers, and it makes you realize that, the industry we're in is a very, very tight one, and we're supremely lucky to have the fortune to work in it.
What do you feel that you learned about yourself?
Well, I've got to say, I always knew I was pretty stubborn, but I think I took it to, I had a very bad cycle accident in Germany, and chipped my elbow, broke it, to the bone. It was pretty brutal, and did all my kind of legging, but, I was self-propelling the whole way. I was not allowed to get in a car or anything like that. So, after spending an hour being put back together again by the doctors, I had to get back on my bike for 100 miles and continue to Bremen. So experiences like that, I think, really, really made me realize just that I needed to keep going, whatever, and never give in, never surrender. So,
well, just like us in the event industry.
Yeah, exactly. Boy, we need that kind of motto nowadays more than ever.
Well, I'm wondering how you got started, because I know that, as you mentioned, you went to Brown University for college, and I read that it was a Bachelor of Arts degree in history and politics. So growing up then, there was no passion, nothing related in any way, shape, or form to the event industry?
Not really. I mean, apart from obviously enjoying going to events and attending them like any university student. But after I left university, I worked for Nintendo in the UK, and as part of that, I had responsibility for organizing some events for Nintendo, for consumers and for customers and suppliers of ours. And I really, really enjoyed that work. Just a sense of achievement from organizing events. And I've got I think, certainly my wife would agree, a pretty short attention span. So actually, working in the events business where, we might have 20 to 25 different projects on at different stages at the same time, all in different places around the world, that really appealed to me.
I wonder how you made the transition then from Nintendo to having your own company.
Well, I had a food business, and then somebody who I knew very well had started Fait Accompli in 1987. So in about 2001, Camilla, who's still my business partner, I started speaking to her about potentially coming in and investing in Fait Accompli and becoming a partner. So nearly 20 years ago. So it was really, it was as much because, I thought Camilla was fantastic. I enjoyed I'd enjoyed experience of events before, but it was kind of a slight step into the unknown for me. But, I'm a great believer unless you try things, you just are never going to necessarily, find your complete niche. And after I'd left Brown, and I'd done politics and history, I knew what I didn't want to do. I knew I didn't want to go into the city. I didn't want to become a lawyer. I didn't want to become a doctor. So I really knew that I wanted to be a generalist, I guess is the best way to put it. But it took me kind of 10 years to really to find my niche.
Well, and also, I mean, I view you, and I feel the same way about myself, as an adventurer. I mean, you talk about even what you're doing with the Child Bereavement UK and being a helicopter pilot. And so it sounds like, kind of that adrenaline rush and just really going for whatever you feel like sounds like who you've been forever.
Absolutely. But then the flip side of that is, I think, in the events business, you need to have a very, very cool head. And if one was too adrenaline driven, I think in the business, especially on the on the planning side, you'd be in deep, deep trouble. So I think actually, from that point of view, and it's one of the things I think, which I love about flying, for example, is, you need to have tremendous discipline in flying. And there's a great saying: there are old pilots, there are bold pilots, but there are very few old, bold pilots. And I feel that you can apply the same element to event organizing, really, that, a lot of it is about discipline. It's about staying kind of behind the scenes, it's essentially about problem solving, and finding solutions for everything, and having a cool head. And I think, if I look at the strand of whether it's flying or doing the kind of the challenge I did this summer, the same strands run through it.
Well, and I'm also thinking about the kind of weddings you've done that have been publicized. Like, I mean, we're talking, you orchestrated the wedding celebrations of Prince William and Katherine, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, and also Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. I mean, it does not get more complicated, I imagine, or challenging as that.
Absolutely. But obviously you're working with exceptional teams. And I think that's the case with, whatever the events are, whether they're royal events or, and sometimes, you could be working absolutely in the middle of nowhere, and you're still relying on the quality and the people around you. And I think that's something that, as event organizers, and we are Fait Accompli, is only as good as the team of suppliers who we have around us. And so those relationships for us, which a lot have gone back over 30 years plus, are essential to our success. And that's been one of our biggest focuses in the pandemic, is really doing whatever we can to help make sure that, all our suppliers, a lot of whom are, small 1-2 man women bands, and who business completely dried up, that they have, the resources to continue to trade, because without them, we don't exist.
Well, I'd love to know something more about your process, Alex. Like, maybe for a moment we can hold off on the royal weddings, because I imagine that there's similarities, but there's also, it's a very different set of procedures. Well, generally speaking, what is your process like from the time you first meet a wedding client? How is it that you start to get your inspiration, your ideas, your design concepts, and take it, if you could take me through a story, either an example or just generally, that would be interesting.
Well, I think the first element, I think, is really to get an understanding of what the clients are looking for and what their vision, and to understand how involved and how they see themselves taking part in the wedding planning. And clients are completely different. For some, brides and increasingly grooms, this is the biggest day they've imagined. They know exactly what they want. Other clients honestly don't have a clue and are looking for kind of inspiration and guidance from us. So I think, the first reference point is to understand that, and getting the basics of locations, venues, numbers, that's key. Secondly, I just can't overestimate the importance of getting an idea of budget at the beginning stages, because the last thing anybody wants to do is to, and especially the organizer or planner, is to put together grandiose, ideas which are just completely out of whack with what the clients are looking to spend. So the budget is essential. And then really the other element is where there's no kind of fait accompli kind of template, which, every single event is completely bespoke. And so, we really do treat each wedding as a unique event. And I think that mindset is critical, because as soon as you start saying, well, that worked well for that wedding and this and that, then, it's not a unique bespoke product, which you're offering to your client.
Other than getting the budget, do you have a specific method by which you start to collect information from them? I mean, do they literally come to your office? Do you go to their home? What is that like in the beginning?
Oh, God, I've forgotten what it's like to go to a client's home.
Right. It's been several months. Yeah.
I wish that were possible. I mean, it totally varies. And we work for, obviously, a lot of high-profile people who their time is very, very stretched. They also, a lot of them live, in different continents to where we're based. So we either fly and travel to them, or we meet sometimes, on the country where the wedding might be happening. I think one of the big kind of changes I've seen over the past 20 years is the complexity and politics of clients has completely changed. If I think back to 20 years ago, 90% of the time you were dealing mainly with the mother of the bride.
Right.
You might deal with the father of the bride when it came to the budget. The bride obviously generally got involved, although that depended on the mother of the bride. The groom literally never got involved.
Right. I remember.
I never got involved. I think I didn't even go to the tasting.
For your own wedding, you mean?
No, my wife wouldn't let me anywhere near the organization of it. But,
right.
Now, I mean, literally sometimes like the groom is more involved and opinionated than the bride. But not only that, if you look at just in the kind of evolution of family dynamics in 20 years, obviously, more parents are divorced. So, you might be dealing with 4 sets of parents, just on the bride's side, so it can get super complicated. So as a result, the amount of diplomacy and politics involved has just grown exponentially in the last 20 years. I think also what's also changed is that quite often, you're dealing just actually with the couple. And that sometimes I find can be the most refreshing of all. If they've been very successful themselves, they're paying the bill, they want to make the decisions, and then actually in terms of like just streamlining decision making and really being crystal clear in terms of what they want. That's the best. When you're having to kind of figure out via the mother or the stepfather or this or that, it can sometimes you need to have Henry Kissinger's diplomatic skills sometimes
right.
to be able to handle it.
Alex, it's funny. I remember because I have a music and entertainment company, and we deal in the high end. But I remember, especially at any point, like you say, in the old days when I was dealing mostly with the bride's mother. And I would witness the mother and the daughters fighting a fair amount. There would be a lot of problems. You talk about diplomacy. I felt like I had to be a therapist.
Absolutely. And as you know, music and entertainment, which is so important to, the life and soul of a wedding, inevitably people have such different opinions.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's going to bring up, I guess, more emotional issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's sometimes, the time when you really got to just put your hands up and say, you guys fight it out. I'm staying out of this round.
Right. Well, would you mind telling me a story, perhaps of maybe one of your, favorite wedding events? Even if you cannot mention the names, but if you're able to maybe walk me through a little bit of a story that was particularly fun and interesting for you, and how you came to come to the design ideas and what you did? I know it's a big question, but I would love if you could take me through that.
One of my favorite weddings was a wedding from last year at an incredible stately home called Castle Howard, which is north of York in Yorkshire in the UK. And it was a fantastic couple. We dealt with them directly. And one of the challenges and it was quite a big wedding for kind of 350 people plus. And one of the big challenges of doing something at a place like Castle Howard, which is not close to London, there aren't a great number of amazing hotels in the kind of surrounding area. The bride and groom really wanted to kind of put a kind of Glastonbury style glamping twist. So essentially we created a kind of our own hotel on the grounds of Castle Howard for the duration of the wedding weekend. And something like 200 of the guests actually stayed on site in tents with bathrooms, showers, obviously kind of communal, but and a great dining tent, bar. There was incredible music, and our client, one is in the music business and one's in the art business. And so it really kind of came together as this incredible mix of their guests, a lot of whom were staying within 5 minutes staggering distance of where the wedding reception was happening, and the rehearsal the night before. And you realize actually that it just created this amazing atmosphere when people didn't need to travel kind of to and from the wedding. And essentially not only was the wedding there, but actually all the guests were staying literally on the grounds. And I think there was a lot of tent creeping. There was all sorts of shenanigans that happened.
Yeah.
But it was an incredibly happy occasion.
Yeah, I've never heard a story like that. Yeah. Do you like music? Do you love music? Okay, stupid questions. Here's the point. You can now hear conversations with some of the biggest music industry professionals around, including artists, songwriters, record company executives, recording engineers, and more. And it's my other podcast called The Music Makers. You can find it on your cell phone's podcast app or at themusicmakers.com. Again, that's The Music Makers. In terms of, you do so many of events that require discretion. I read somewhere, maybe it was in your website, that said you fiercely guard the privacy of the guests, and you'll even, quote unquote, gently police your guests to control social media exposure. I imagine that's got to come with a whole set of challenges. What would you say have been some of the most difficult situations that you've had to overcome that maybe were unexpected with this kind of an event?
I think obviously social media just makes life so difficult from that point of view, especially when clients, they are high profile and they want the event to remain private and for photographs not to get out. Really, I'd say nowadays pretty much the only way to do that is to ask guests to check in their phones,
which they're so hesitant to do, I imagine.
A lot are, but you know what? A lot are super happy to. And, we organized a big, great wedding in Italy last September. And guests were asked to check in their phones. And the atmosphere as a result of the wedding and the reception and the dinner afterwards was incredible, because people didn't have to worry about their behavior being captured on film surreptitiously, or a lot of people feel I think they actually feel relieved not to have their phones on them. One very high profile banking kind of executive checked in his phone, and I heard him tell my team when he was checking it in, he said, "I'm super relieved to hand it over because I can guarantee the Chinese are listening in." So, and I think, very importantly, Andy, when a bride and groom are walking down the aisle, they don't necessarily want to see 200 cameras,
right,
2 phones turned,
right,
and looking. And, and guests don't do it. It's not, it's not out of malevolence. They're doing it. They're doing it because, it's kind of ingrained in our DNA now to kind of take pictures, to show kids. And
you miss the experience. I feel like you miss out on the experience when you're doing that.
Yeah. And on the rare occasion now where we have a star performer, at any of our parties, I mean, which happens a lot less than it used to. But, it drives me bananas when, you look at this incredible star and, they must just be looking and seeing 300 phones turned around looking at them. And the difference when people don't have their phones and the degree by which they're engaging, with each other is incredible. And I think, Andy, another huge change has happened in the 20 years since I've been in the business. And I think, again, this is just a societal changes. I think people's attention spans are just disappearing. People's ability to actually, not look at their phone and talk to, a dinner partner, one to the left, one to the right, or to, engage and, not pop out. It used to be that people used to pop outside the tent to go have a smoke. But, they're not doing that now. They're going outside to check their emails.
Right. That's right.
So I think one of the real challenges which event organizers have nowadays is how do you continue to engage a guest while recognizing that people have this insatiable desire to kind of record the occasion. And pretty much the only way I know to stop people recording the occasion and looking at their phones is to take their phones away.
But other than that, I mean, you just brought up an interesting point, having to keep their engagement throughout several hours of an event and have them not be distracted. I mean, I imagine, are you just having something new constantly, visually, smell-wise? What are some of the techniques that you use to keep them engaged?
I think a lot of that depends on what the client is like. Some clients have a short attention span and they like to be consistently entertained. Some clients, for example, I know you're in the music business, but some clients hate listening to music during dinner. It's a personal preference. Others love to have a 40-piece orchestra playing for guests during dinner and, they couldn't care if nobody hears themselves. Kind of somewhere in between sounds kind of good to me. But a lot of it actually is also, if it is a seated dinner and it's placed, I can always tell how much effort the clients, and this is the same when I go to a dinner, is how much effort the clients have actually put into the seating plan. Because, if people make a real effort and they make sure that people are sitting next to people who they're going to get on well with, they've got, interests, then, boom, 2 hours before you know it, in dinner should be all about people getting to know each other. Ultimately, that's what the life and soul of a party is a guest. So the best buzz that I get out of event organizing is if you walk into a dinner and you can just kind of feel the electricity and you can hear the laughter, you can hear the chit chat, you can just kind of feel the dinner kind of bubbling, and you kind of know that it's going to be an epic night. And so a lot of the engagement, to be honest with you, should be provided by the guests themselves.
That's a good point.
Some of the best parties I've been to have been, in which we've organized, have not been big, lavish budget affairs. Great drinks, great people, great music. That's a pretty intoxicating mix right there.
But what about the big budget, lavish weddings? Like when you're orchestrating a royal wedding, I mean, I can't imagine. Let's take, I don't know how much you can really talk about this, but...
Well, I can't, so...
Okay. Well, generally speaking, I guess I'll put it that way. The pressure that you must be feeling at the same time. I mean, this is obviously what you have done forever. You do an enormous amount of again, events, weddings that have to operate with a lot of discretion. But when you're dealing with a royal wedding and you've got the entire world's eyes also on you, in a sense, through the media, how do you view this, Alex? I mean, this is what you do. How do you view that at that level?
Well, first of all, I mean, we don't have the world's media on our eyes because, both those weddings, the reason we were brought on was to organize all the private side. So everything that, the couples and the clients did privately. So to be honest with you, I mean, I'm not just saying this, but I feel the same pressure with all of our clients and whoever they are. This is a huge day in their life, and it's up to us to make it absolutely seamless and fantastic for them. And I often say to clients, because we don't do any marketing, where we have a website, but we've never done PR, we've never done anything like that. Our interests are totally aligned with our clients in terms of making sure that their wedding is the best it can possibly be, because our business comes from the events we organize. So the best marketing we can do for Fait Accompli is to make sure every single event and wedding we do is 12 out of 10.
What about also, I know for me, I've been through this a lot, friends of mine, the struggle of balancing art with business. I mean, obviously to have an organization like you have that's as successful as it is, you have to have a very high level interest in business and, ability. How do you view balancing the business aspect with the art of what you do?
That's a really good question, Andy. I think first of all, something essential is that and this is something which we really try and instill in everybody who works with us, both our suppliers and most importantly for the team at Fait Accompli, is to understand the value of money, because it would be a lot of the things we're dealing with are very expensive. The events are expensive, for good reason, because building incredible tents, building incredible structures does cost money. But what's essential is that everybody who works with us, understands that the clients are relying on us to provide real value. So I think it's not just about a business sense, but it's understanding that value and how we can not only put on an incredible event, but to do it in the way that offers best value for our clients.
Well, and also related to this, as part of it is having to build and manage a team, and whether it's your own team within your own organization or the team of, I like to call them creative partners as opposed to vendors. Do you tend to use the same people, or do you change it up often, based on perhaps the needs of the client, the needs of the design? How do you put together a team for each event?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the biggest element of that is where the event is happening. It's because obviously if we're doing an event in India, for example, the cost of bringing product and people out is huge. So obviously wherever we are, we try and use as much local talent as we possibly can, which not only makes sense for us and makes sense for the client financially, but also if you're doing something somewhere like India, you want to as much economically for India to benefit as possible. And that's actually not only just about the kind of the goods and services you're providing, but also, it's amazing, and people don't understand sometimes, events that you have, it's the effect it has on the local economy or a local town in terms of crew accommodation, crew subsistence, guest staying nearby, all that really, really contributes. I think the other kind of essential thing we look for when we're kind of building teams is a great work ethic is essential. And that's not only clearly for our suppliers, but it's also critical for the people who work for us at Fait Accompli, because, we need to know, there's a perception that obviously wedding planning or being involved in the wedding business is incredibly glamorous. And of course, elements of it are, but a lot of it is hard work. You've got to be down and dirty. We tell everybody who works for us, you've got to be prepared to clean the loos. You've got to be prepared to really do things which, and I make sure in Camilla it's exactly the same. Camilla there's nothing she loves more than hoovering a tent just before, kind of, I think she finds it's her form of therapy. Jess, who's one of my other business partners, she has other kind of favorite little kind of cleaning things she does to make everything spick and span. But the other big element that's critical for our team is the ability to kind of to work with anyone and to get on well with people, because they are dealing with everybody from incredibly challenging guests to people who are building the tents to, and often they're dealing with people in languages they might not understand. So that ability to not only have a great work ethic and to understand the value of work, but also to be able to get on well with all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds and cultures is incredibly important. So I'd say those are the key things we look for in our team. We're not looking for Nobel scientists.
Right.
Necessarily. I mean, if any would like to apply, then fantastic.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. But really it's finding that kind of je ne sais pas in people who they've obviously, you want them to be passionate about working in the business, but ultimately, you want them to be passionate about helping people to have as good a time as possible.
Oh, I love that. Just a few more questions. Also, you've been doing this for a while, Alex. And so, I mean, me too. We've seen the world change so much. We've seen the event industry evolve in so many ways. How do you kind of stay in touch with, and look, I view you as one of the trendsetters. All right. So I want to be clear about that. It's not that you are looking at trends and following them, but rather you're setting them. How do you maintain this level of success for so long? How do you, when you look back, how do you feel you've been able to keep up and do that?
That's a great question. And I think a lot of it is about how you evolve yourself in life, and if I look at the last 20 years since I got involved at Fait Accompli, personally, I've got married, I've had 5 children, I've lived in Sweden for 5 years, I've traveled a lot, my father's died, lots of things have happened in my life, which I think, makes you evolve as a person, and hopefully for the better. We've also, brought in great younger people within the business. Jess, who I mentioned before, became a shareholder of Fait Accompli last year. She started with Fait Accompli back in 2010. We tend to find that people who work for us, they either work for us for an incredibly short period of time, or an unbelievably long period of time. Incredibly short because we know pretty quickly whether they're going to fit in with the team and whether they're going to be a success.
Right. And
incredibly long because we're very, very loyal to the people who work for us, and vice versa. And if I look at the evolution of the relationships with our clients, especially for Camilla, who started the business, nearly 35 years ago, she's organized some weddings for clients. Then she's organized christenings for the kids. She's organized, and then we've organized 18th and 21st for those kids. We've organized those kids' weddings. We've organized those kids' christenings. So, you look at actually the life cycle of clients, and when you've been in business as long as we have, you're really seeing the arc of life and death, unfortunately. And I think one of the biggest things that I've realized, and I kind of got an idea of it when I first bought into Fait Accompli, but which I really understand now, is there's a tremendous perception that the wedding business has really low barriers to entry if you're a wedding organizer. And the reason why is I think people think literally got a phone, a laptop, anybody can be a wedding organizer or an event organizer. I think the reality is, I think it's got incredibly high barriers to entry, because if you've done a good job for a client, it takes a lot for them to, let's say a client has 3 daughters, we organize the first wedding. If we've done a good job, we've got to know the clients, and that's one of the things I love about the business, is the degree by which you really get to know clients. And then, what you might not see them for a few years, but inevitably that phone call will come again when, another daughter or a son or, is getting married. And so, there is this incredible trust and relationship, which we have with our clients, which is so important. And it's why, for me, our business is really about the 2 most important people in our business are our clients and our suppliers. And honestly, both are equally as important as each other. And I think it's essential for people to remember that.
Well, geez, Alex, this has been wonderful. I mean, I've really enjoyed it. I feel the time just flew as I thought it might. And it's been really interesting to hear your perspective on this. I mean, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. And I've got to say, it's kind of feels like event organizing therapy for me. I've never done it in 19 years to actually sit down and talk about myself and the business for 45 minutes. So thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for listening to my conversation with Alex Fitzgibbons. Be sure to check out the website, which is faitaccompli.co.uk. Again, faitaccompli.co.uk. Of course, this is in the show notes at our website of theweddingbiz.com. And please share this with your friends and colleagues so that they can find out about this interview and the show. And if you could give it a top rating wherever you get your podcast from, a great review, that would also help people find the show. And don't forget to listen to our follow-on segment that comes out each Wednesday called The Next Level, in which I have a guest co-host, and together we tease out some of the highlights of the interview of the week so that you can get some tips and advice to help your own business grow and thrive even further. And this week's guest co-host is going to be Carrie Goldberg, Travel and Weddings Director at Harper's Bazaar. I want to also mention next week's interviews, and that is going to be on Monday, Tony Crespo of FMI Farms, a national floral wholesaler that offers a web-based marketplace for florists and event planners. And then on Wednesday, a revisit of my interview of a couple years ago with gown designer Ines DeSanto and her managing director, Veronica. Very, very special conversation. And then in the first week of January, I'm going to kick off the new year with 2 very cool conversations. One is going to be with Jennifer Stein, editor-in-chief of Destination I Do magazine. She's going to help me to talk about my own reflections on 2020. And I'm also going to have a very special episode with Preston Bailey, which is going to have a very big surprise in it. So thank you again for listening, and we'll catch you next week on The Wedding Biz.